What's up guys, it's Topsy, and here we are with the next installment of What If Duelist Kingdom had a Speed Duel box. And for today's video, we're going to be covering the boy himself, Bonz. And I'm super excited for this one. Zombies is one of my personal favorite monster types in general, and I had a good amount of fun building Bonz's deck. But before we get started, I did want to clear up some parameters as to how exactly I constructed each of these decks. First off, all these decks are meant to be constructed in a way where we could realistically see them being printed in a real-life Speed Duel box. That means that since this is a full-size box, roughly 50% of the cards are going to be reprints, while the other 50 is going to be new cards. Well, it's closer to like 55-45, but you get the idea. Secondly, we can't give these decks cards that are egregiously powerful. So with that being said, I tried choosing cards that are still interesting but wouldn't break the game, or at least I hope they wouldn't. And lastly, I did the same thing with the skills that I gave each of these characters. I tried keeping these decks and skills in theme with each of these characters, so something you could realistically see them playing in the anime as well. So with all that being said, let's jump in. Alright then, so for today's episode, as I said, we have Bonz. And with Bonz, I went ahead and gave him Pumpkin King, the King of Ghosts. And this is super exciting. Pumpkin King is one of those really iconic cards from the anime, and honestly, it is so weird that we never actually got him printed in Speed Duel. So like, it makes no sense. We have Castle of Dark Illusion in the game, but not Pumpkin King, and whatever. Only Konami knows what they're doing. But as you can see, there wasn't many directions we could realistically take with Bonz because he doesn't have that many appearances in the anime. And whenever we see him, he never truly does have like a coherent strategy. We know some stuff about him, like he plays Zombie World or has a Zombie World themed deck. We know Pumpkin King is one of his boss monsters, and he is very closely correlated with Skull Servant. So these are the parameters that I used in order to build this deck. So with that being said, let's begin. So starting off the list, we of course have Pumpkin King, the King of Ghosts. And honestly, his effect is irrelevant, just because it's very dependent on you having Castle of Dark Illusion. However, don't worry, this is the actual boss monster of the deck, and we will make good use of him via the skill. Honestly, there's not much to say about Pumpkin King himself, besides the fact that he is really cool. Alright, next card up we have is Red Eyes Zombie Dragon. Now, you might think this is an out there choice, because Bonz never played this. However, Bonz does play against Joey in Duelist Kingdom. And one of the gimmicks that he had during this duel is that whenever he brought back a monster from the graveyard, it came back as like a zombie style monster. And I figured that this is kind of a cool like callback to the anime. But I don't know, it just, Red Eyes is a Joey card and he duels Bonz, and I don't know, it made sense. And not only that, but Red Eyes Zombie Dragon is one of those cards that specifically works with Zombie World, so that's why he's here. Next card up is Immortal Ruler, and the primary reason we have Immortal Ruler here is, for one, it looks like a card that Bonz would have played in the anime, but for two, it's a card that works specifically with Zombie World, and the deck lives and dies by Zombie World. It's a super important card for the deck, and I'd like to see him in the game. Okay, so next up we have Zombie Mammoth, and this card, I'm not gonna lie, it's not that good. If anything, it's actually kind of a hindrance to the deck if it gets outed. But it does tie very well with the zombie theming, and it hasn't been printed yet, and it's just a nice body to summon on board. Honestly, I feel like there should be like no stipulations about this guy getting printed, right? I think it's just fine. Next card up is Paladin of Cursed Dragon, and this card is really cool, and it's a shame that it's not in the game. Again, we are going back to the whole theme of like reincarnated monsters that already exist, and Paladin is one of those cards that fits that bill. Realistically, it's just another big monster for the deck to have access to. It has a really cute effect where it's able to revive a zombie monster in your opponent's graveyard whenever it destroys it by battle, and that's really cool. It's super reliant on Zombie World, and I think that makes it very balanced. Moving on, we have Goblin Zombie, a phenomenal reprint for this deck, and honestly, Gobbo is just one of the coolest zombies in the game. Now, where I got a little spicy with it is with Zombie Master. And I would be a liar if I didn't admit that Zombie Master is one hell of a card. It's so good that it was turned into a skill in the early stages of Speed Duel. And I feel like we've advanced enough in Speed Duel's format where we can get a monster like Zombie Master into the thick of it all. It fits the whole gimmick of working and reincarnating the graveyard, and overall, I feel like this card could come into the game. I feel like it's fairly balanced at this point, given just how powerful the strategies have gotten as of late, and would be a really interesting addition into the format. The last cards we want to talk about is, I went ahead and gave the Skull Servant strategy some more love. Of course, we still have King of the Skull Servants as like the other boss monster of the deck, but alongside that, we gave him 2 copies of regular Skull Servant and Whitemare. Yep, this was realistically the only Skull Servant card that felt okay to bring into the game. I did consider Lady in White, but I didn't really like the protection that she gave. I thought it was a bit much, but Whitemare in particular, I like this card a lot. It treats itself as Skull Servant in the graveyard, and while in hand, it's able to target one of your banished Skull Servants or a Whitemare card itself and return it back to the grave. And that's really cool because it synergizes very well with this King of Skull Servants, which is able to banish a Skull Servant from the graveyard in order to revive it back into the field. And I think that's a really neat interaction. But in addition, it's also able to do the other, it's also able to revive it from the graveyard by pitching itself. So I feel like that's a lot of cool interactions with the the Skull Servant strategy. Also, I'm fully aware that a Whitemare does list Lady in White in its text, and even though this card isn't printed in this deck, I feel like it's okay. Just because Konami's already set up a precedent that cards can get printed into the format without every card being available for the player. The most common example that I have of this is with the Fossil deck, and being the fact that Fossil Fusion isn't a physical card in the game and instead is regulated to a skill. And for this very reason, I feel like Whitemare should be able to be printed with no issue whatsoever in this hypothetical box. But yeah, that's the monster lineup. I'm overall really happy with it. I think I chose some really interesting choices and pretty much bolstered up the Skull Servant strategy without making it too broken. I gave us some really interesting and really phenomenal pieces of support for the zombie strategy as a whole, and adding Pumpkin King into the game I feel like is just a must. It's just one of the coolest cards. It's so iconic, and I actually gave him a skill that makes this card actually worthwhile playing, but just you'll have to wait for that one. Moving on to the spell cards, we have some basic support for zombies: Book of Life, Call of the Mummy, and Foolish Burial. I feel like overall these cards are just staple for any zombie strategy. They love the graveyard. This is easy access to your zombie monsters, and this is just a way to get your resources back from the graveyard. So overall, phenomenal. Moving on to the new spell cards that I have for him are Nightmare Steel Cage, being the first one. So this is one of those cards that Bonz has been shown to play in the anime, at least according to the wiki. And honestly, I feel like it's a-okay. We already know that Swords of Revealing Light was a card that was going to get printed in the Battle City Finals set, and Nightmare Steel Cage is just kind of like a worse version of that. And if Swords can come to the game, Nightmare Steel Cage can come to the game as well. Not only that, but as I said, this is a Bonz card, so I think that's fine. You know what? I'll hold this off on this one for now. The other card that I want to that I would like to see printed in a hypothetical Bonz deck is Zombie World. And yeah, as I've been alluding to this whole time, the whole deck revolves around Zombie World. And honestly, as far as field spells go, this it's phenomenal. This field spell is really great, and I feel like as a whole should be fine for the game. It doesn't do anything crazy egregiously strong. The one stipulation that I do feel like makes Zombie World a bit scary or uncanny to get is the fact that it doesn't let you tribute summon monsters against zombies, but let's face it, not that many decks in the format right now are tribute summoning as it is. A lot of them are just normal summoning regular monsters or special summoning their boss monsters. So I feel like that stipulation alone shouldn't be that big of a deal. And a lot of the strategies aren't super reliant on typings as well, so I feel like that floodgatey effect doesn't matter too much here either. But now for the more contentious take, that being Zombie Power Struggle. So if you're unfamiliar with this card, this is one of the newer Zombie World support cards, and it's a great card. This is more of a battle-centric card, and let's go ahead and give it a quick read. Target one zombie monster on the field. Until the end of this turn, it gains 1000 attack or loses 1000 attack. So do keep in mind, this effect works simultaneously on both sides of the field. So that's really important to keep in mind. During your main phase, if this card is in the graveyard, you can shuffle one banished zombie monster into the deck, and if you do, set this card but banish it when it leaves the field. You can only activate one Zombie Power Struggle per turn. As a whole, this card is incredibly powerful. being able to modulate the attack of your opponent's monsters or your own monsters by 1,000 is it's huge. But my one argument for this card is that we do have a card like Shrink in the game, and Shrink does have the potential of being able to modulate attack by a significantly higher amount. And for that very reason, I do think this card that kind of balances the effect of Zombie Power Struggle. Also, I do acknowledge that it is a very it does have a very powerful recursion effect, but the best thing I can say about that is that you can only activate that effect once per copy, which I guess does get a little weird with multiple copies of the card, but luckily it's not a infinite recursion effect. And lastly, I would also like to say that this card only affects your monsters unless you control Zombie World on the field. And under all those circumstances, I feel like that makes the card not that broken. Would it be great for zombie strategies? Absolutely. It would be amazing. I would love to have this card in a zombie strategy for Bonz. But I don't know. Am I bugging a bit here? Am I overselling how broken it would be? Or do you actually think it would be that strong? I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments section. But that's pretty much a spell lineup. I personally like it a lot. I feel like it still has that SpeedDuel feeling to it. It feels very in tune with Bonz so far. But yeah. Now let's wrap up with the trap cards. First trap card we're going to be giving him is Haunted Shrine. This is just a card that's already exists in the game and is actually a really good trap card for the zombie strategy in order to recur your zombie monsters. So overall, awesome card. The last two cards I have here are also related to Zombie World. So this one right here, Haunted Zombies, is a pretty strong card. It does give you a lot of tokens, being able to give you 2 tokens under the guise that you do banish a zombie monster from either graveyard. So you can get extra advantage if you have Zombie World on the field. Not only that, but this does also have the effect of the Power Struggle, that it's able to shuffle back a banished zombie monster into the deck in order to set this card. Part of the reason that I ended up putting these cards in particular that will have these recursion effects into the game is that I didn't give Bonz Mizuki, which is a card that is able to special summon a monster from your graveyard as long as it banishes itself. I figured that cards like those could be a bit problematic in tandem with some of these spell and trap cards. So that's part of the reason I stayed away from Mizuki. However, the main reason I have Haunted Zombies in this deck for his Bonz is that it gives us a way to tribute summon our Red Eyes Zombie Dragon. I feel like having a way to get monsters on your field for a tribute summon is pretty good. Not only that, but it does give you a way to survive turns whenever your opponent clears your board. Overall, I think this card is very versatile, so I personally really like it. And the last card for Bonz we have here is Return of the Zombies. And this is a super interesting trap card because it works in a really interesting way. It technically is removal and technically can be a way to cheat out a monster from the graveyard. So what this card says is that you can banish a zombie monster on the field, so either field, to special summon a zombie monster from the graveyard to the player who originally controlled that monster on field. So technically this card can out an opponent's monster that you're having a hard time with, but in return you have to give your opponent another monster from their graveyard. Or on the flip side, you can get rid of a monster on your field to bring out one of your stronger ones from the graveyard. And I think that level of complexity and interaction in a card is super interesting. I don't think it fundamentally breaks the game in any way, shape, or form. We do have a card like Book of Life that's able to just revive a card from the graveyard. And this one does require you to tribute a monster. And I would originally think that the effect to get rid of an opponent's monster is kind of powerful. However, it does give your opponent a replacement monster. Because of that, I feel like this card should be fine and shouldn't be far too strong for the game. But that pretty much breaks down Bonz's deck. Overall, I do think that I gave the deck some maybe questionable choices with some of these cards because they might be a wee bit too strong. But as a whole, I think I kept it at a reasonable level. I'm overall really happy with a lot of these cards. The deck is very much Zombie World centric, and I think that's really, really cool. But with all that being said, give me your thoughts in the comment section below towards the main deck. Do you guys like it? Is there any cards you would have liked to see instead, or any changes you would have made? Do you think any of these cards are way too powerful? I'd love to hear all your thoughts. But now it's time to move on to the skill cards. Alright then, so first off, for the skills, we have the skill that I would say would be the expected skill you're supposed to play with the deck, and that is Rise Pumpkin King. So, as I already mentioned and alluded to in the beginning of the video, I pretty much built this deck to have Pumpkin King be the sole boss monster of the deck. And this skill helps to do that very, very well. And yes, Pumpkin King does have extra effects because of the skill, but given the way the card works right now, it might as well be a vanilla. So, I feel like that's a-okay. So with that being said, let's go ahead and give this skill a quick read. Activate this skill during your main phase. Each turn, one Pumpkin King, the King of Ghosts, you normal summon, can be summoned without tributing. This is one of the best parts about this skill, the fact that you're able to bring out this card that has, let's face it, not great stats out without tribute summoning it. It does take up your normal summon, which I think is a fair trade-off. Apply the following skills while you control Pumpkin King, the King of Ghosts. Once per turn, place one counter on this card. All zombie monsters you control gain 100 attack, and all zombie monsters your opponent controls lose 100 attack for each counter on this card. And I went ahead and blended both the effect of the Pumpkin King's original effect that he's supposed to have alongside Pump Princess to go ahead and make Pumpkin King feel a lot more menacing. Being able to continuously keep whittling away your opponent's field while still making your side a lot stronger. And I think that's kind of a cool gimmick because you're rotting away their monsters while your zombie army gets stronger. I don't know. It makes sense in my head, and it has a little roleplay aspect to it too. I think it's kind of neat. Last part of the effect is while you control another zombie monster, monsters your opponent controls can't target this card for attacks. And I think that's another really cool part of the skill. Essentially, Pumpkin King, being the king of your deck, has all his little minions protect him on the field. So this makes your opponent having to out the Pumpkin King a lot more difficult. And do keep in mind, this protection does only protect you from battle destruction. And overall, I think these skills together and this skill as a whole makes Pumpkin King an actual fun boss monster to build around. I had a lot of fun. This is one of my personal favorite skills that I constructed out of all of them. But I would love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comment section below. Do you guys like this skill? As I said, I am very biased. I did make it, but I think this skill came out really, really cool. And I feel like it works just fine. The other skill that I went ahead and gave Bonz is just Zombie World. I know it's boring, but it just makes too much sense to have a skill that is Zombie World in the deck already, just so it's like it's set up at the beginning of the duel and just makes the deck run a lot easier. I think that this is probably fine. I could have gone a little more creative and given him something else, maybe a Skull Servant skill instead, but I kind of just wanted to have the whole Zombie World theming be the main aspect of the deck. Alright guys, and with that, this concludes today's video. So yeah, that's essentially what I ended up creating for Bonz's hypothetical Duelist Kingdom deck. Let me know in the comment section below what your thoughts are, changes I should have made. Do you overall like the deck? Do you think I went a little too much, not enough? I'd love to hear all your thoughts in the comment section below. For the next video, I'm thinking that I should cover Pegasus. Pegasus is one of those characters that never truly got a good deck. All his strategies were kind of, they're not good. And if you want to know how bad they were, I can shameless plugin, but I'd recommend you guys check out my tier list videos where I went ahead and tiered all these starter decks from SpeedDuels. And spoiler alert, Pegasus did not tier very well. So yeah, I think I'll go ahead and do Pegasus next video. But if you guys did end up enjoying today's video, then a like would be very much appreciated. And hey, you might as well subscribe if you're excited to see all the other characters from this set. But with that, I've been Topsy. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.